If every age of your life could sit in a single room and offer one piece of collective advice, the result wouldn't be a random list of tips, but a unified map of the human experience. Most of us live in a state of quiet dread regarding the calendar. We are conditioned to view aging as a process of erosion, a sequential loss of physical power, of social relevance, and of time. But the oldest among us suggest the opposite is true. They described aging not as a loss, but as a gathering. Each decade provides a specific, mandatory tool required to build the next stage of the journey. This is the architect approach to life. The chaotic risks of your 20s provide the data for the structural choices of your 30s, which in turn support the internal shifts of your 50s. When we stop fearing the passage of time and start listening to the intentional design of each decade, the result is a life that feels coherent rather than accidental. At age 10, the primary focus is establishing security. This is the era of raw curiosity, where the baseline mandate is to play, ask questions, and explore without the inhibition of social judgment. By age 20, that curiosity transforms into courage. When you are young, your greatest asset is time, which grants you the biological permission to fail early and often, before financial and family responsibilities begin to compound. This era of exploration is a relatively modern phenomenon. The cultural revolutions of the 1960s and 70s permanently delayed traditional adulthood markers, creating a gap between childhood and full commitment. Psychologists now define this as emerging adulthood. It is an era of necessary instability, where you are neither beholden to your parents nor yet committed to a web of adult roles. Age 30 arrives as the structural response to that instability. This is the decade of settling down, of choosing a career for enjoyment, constructing an equal marriage, and setting the boundaries that define who you will become. The compounding logic is clear. The wide-open possibilities of your 20s must eventually fuse into a reinforced linear path, allowing you to plant your feet firmly on the ground. Surviving the volatility of these early years builds the psychological scaffolding required to face the profound shifts of middle age. Around age 40, we enter what Carl Jung called the afternoon of life. The ego-driven goals of the morning lose their psychological utility. Realizing most days may be behind you triggers a reappraisal, sacrificing external conquest for internal balance. By age 50, this internal migration leads to a sense of freedom. Psychologists like Erik Erikson observed that this is the decade where individuals finally shed the societal masks of their youth. Confucius described this as the moment he finally understood the decrees of heaven, a stage of life characterized by accepting circumstances with equanimity and a docile ear for the truth. Entering your 60s often triggers a cognitive phenomenon called the positivity effect. As the brain ages, it naturally begins to prioritize positive information and meaningful moments over the stress and competition of earlier decades. This shift changes your operating system. You move from the acquisition phase of youth into a strategic era of reflection and mentorship, using your time to guide the generations following in your footsteps. By age 70, many describe a sense of calm and easiness that younger people often miss. Because they are no longer shackled by the expectations of the workforce or the responsibilities of child-rearing, they can finally follow the dictates of their own hearts. To find the data behind a flourishing life, we look to the Harvard Grant Study, which tracked hundreds of men for nearly 80 years to identify what actually predicted a healthy old age. This chart reveals a staggering correlation. Relationship satisfaction at age 50 better predicted physical health at 80 than cholesterol or social class. Deep social ties function as biological armor, speeding illness recovery and measurably slowing cognitive decline. In the final weeks of life, palliative care research shows that individuals undergo phenomenal growth as the pressure to please society evaporates. Common themes of remorse and anger give way to an absolute necessity for forgiveness, both for oneself and for others. At age 100, the final revelation is that the self was never the point. Meaning is found in the legacy of love and the degree to which you are a person that others could count on. The data from a century of living shows that human connection is the ultimate compounding return on our time. When we view the entire timeline, the interdependency is undeniable. You cannot reach the integrity of an elder without the courage of your 20s or the balance discovered in your 40s. We are wrong to fear getting older. Every stage of the lifespan has its own unique, indispensable value. Honor the curiosity of your inner 10-year-old. Forgive the risks of your younger self, and act today with the grace and perspective of the centenarian you are becoming. Growing older is not a tragedy of time, but a privilege and a compounding journey toward becoming who you were always meant to be.